Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to go over an article that I saw that kind of it points out a bit of a problem in certain Hollywood circles that's really kind of it shows a lot in the filmmaking for the most part. And this was an interview done with Olivia Munn, and most people probably remember her from when she was on G4 with Attack of the Show, as well as she moved into films after that. She was Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse, which is really what this quote and article are about. And she was also in The Predator recently, the newer one. So she was asked how she felt about X-Men Apocalypse, working on it and playing the character of Psylocke and working with Bryan Singer and Simon Kinberg. Kinberg would go on to direct X-Men Dark Phoenix, which came out this year and was a colossal failure. Now, Munn had some interesting words to say. And again, this speaks back to kind of behind the scenes versus what they show the public. And she basically said that Bryan Singer and Simon Kinberg had no clue about anything involving the X-Men from the comics. They did. They had no. They didn't know anything about Psylocke's backstory or any of that stuff. They really just tried to write a character, and they happened to make that character Psylocke's because they liked the powers. So it was very interesting to kind of hear this from an actor, because most of the time, actors or an actress, most of the time, actors and actresses are very tight-lipped about stuff that happens behind the scenes, especially with if it's a negative thing reflecting on a director. But given that Bryan Singer is not in a good place right now because of all of the allegations of child abuse, which could be true, and obviously Simon Kinberg is in hot water because Dark Phoenix was a colossal failure. So basically, this goes over into a bigger issue, and the issue is that Hollywood directors and writers are always touted as like, oh, I'm such a big fan of the material that I'm making. Whenever they have a license, something that a comic book or a long-standing film series or something like that, you see most of the time that they'll come out and say, "Oh, I've been such a big fan of this since I was a little kid. I know all the stuff and everything." And they always try to kind of tote this whole thing where oh, they've been reading the comics or whatever since they were kids, and they grew up with the characters and all this other stuff. And many times in reality, they're totally disconnected from the subject matter. But even some of them that say, "Oh, well, I didn't grow up with this, but as soon as I got this, I went and I read all the material, and I think I'm well versed in it now." You'll see people that say that as well, but in reality, a lot of the times behind the scenes, it's they're flying by the seat of their pants, and they don't give a shit about the source material. They're just focused on making their film, which to fans is kind of a big punch in the face. And it really doesn't reflect very well on the final product in many cases. And it's even stranger in this scenario because you see that Bryan Singer has directed, I believe that was his fourth X-Men film in the main line that he had directed, and Simon Kinberg had written several of them. So you're talking about people that had written and been involved with multiple X-Men franchise films, good ones, in fact, in many cases, and had no idea about the background of the characters. And I think this is where Marvel as a studio kind of comes in, because it seems legitimately like a lot of the people that direct their films and a lot of people that star in their movies know about those characters. They know them almost intimately. And you look at stuff like Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is a huge comic book fan. Everybody knows that. He's a huge nerd. You look at guys like You look at other guys that have done stuff. Um, I don't know why certain people aren't coming to my mind. The Russo brothers. The Russo brothers are great at making superhero films, and they adore superheroes. You look at a lot of people like that, and there's funny stories and stuff about actors. Even like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, he had no idea what a Wolverine even was when he was cast for that role, which is hilarious. But at the same time, it's a weird like thing, like, okay, like you don't even know what the character is. You thought you were playing like a human hybrid animal. You thought he was playing like a wolf or something. And it's kind of hilarious. But obviously he did learn about the character after the casting and after he came in for the film. But it feels odd that obviously Bryan Singer was the director, so he didn't know much about it either, probably, other than the basics of Wolverine's powers and how certain things worked. It seems like they almost just go over the basics and that's enough. Now, I have no problem about hiring a person on and saying that, okay, if you don't know a lot about this material, we're going to provide you with the material and we'd like you to learn it so that you can write an appropriate script that directly adapts these characters from page to screen, which makes sense. And I think Marvel does that with a good amount of their characters. And I know that I've heard stories in the past that they have provided comics uh, to actors and actresses that are playing certain parts so that they can understand their character better. And it does make a lot of sense when you look at it that way, because then you get the base version of the character. Even if the movie version's different, you get usually they're at least an offshoot of the character from the comic pages. So it ultimately it helps them. And the fact that if the director of said film is not well versed in those characters, that just makes the final product very strange and weird. So I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with an issue like this, but really what I hate is the dishonesty, where they come out and they say, "Oh, we're huge fans of the work. We're huge fans of this and this and this." And again, many times you can tell with the final result in the final film. Sometimes you can still make a good film and not know jack shit. It's a possibility, but I'd rather you would at least be upfront about it and say, "Look, I don't know much about this character. I made the movie around this, and the character is going to act like this because it fits for the movie, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't." um, so it's just more of that kind of uh, PR nonsense, that PR stuff that they kind of, they pour honey in the fan's ear, sort of, that kind of an idea. And it's more of an issue with that than it is the final product for me in many cases. Even though it is very clear that Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix are both garbage movies. But I'd like to know what you think about this type of an issue. Do you like to see directors and stuff come out and say that they're huge fans of the work and stuff like that, or are you skeptical of those type of things? Do you think it's more of a PR stunt? Do you think it's more of I have to come out here and say this type of thing? I'd like to know your opinions in the comments. Again, I like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?